I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Zoning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 15, 2019, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Star Ledger and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 15, 2019, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 15, 2019, said notice was posted in the office of the Zoning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code and your safety, please be advised that this facility is designed with 2 emergency exits, which are on your right at the front and rear of the meeting room. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues of what the board may legally consider in reaching their decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times.
Thank you, Eileen. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes?
Here.
Mr. Mertens?
Here.
Mr. Moretti?
Here.
Mr. O'Donnell's been excused. Mr. Orozco?
Here.
Mr. Saya has been excused. Mr. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Laughlin has been excused. Chairman Nansen?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Tropley, mind swearing in the professionals, please?
I do. The record to reflect that the unwritten speech of Mr. Howard has been sworn to be.
Thank you. Approval of minutes.
There's no minutes this evening?
Vouchers.
No vouchers this evening.
Correspondence.
I do have an email from Mr. Salvatore Alfieri. He is the attorney for K10 Holding LLC, which is on tonight's agenda. He said that the applicant has authorized their professionals to make revisions in response to some of the comments from our board professionals, and therefore he asked the board to take jurisdiction tonight and carry the application to a future meeting date, and it was decided on December the 9th. So he would like this application carried to December 9th with no further notice.
What's the agenda for December 9th?
Hold on one second. December 9th has Bennett Road, which is also Mr. Alfieri's case, and Mary Ellen Evans, which is building a residence on an unimproved street. So, I mean, we can carry it to that date and see what happens then.
Mr. Tropley.
Mr. Chairman, I have no objection to taking jurisdiction this evening. Of course, if we get to the December 9th date and it doesn't appear that Mr. Alfieri is ready, the expiration date on this application is December 26th. I think any further adjournments would be conditioned on at least a 90-day extension of time.
Okay.
So with that in mind, I would recommend that we take jurisdiction this evening, services in order, and carry it till December 9th without further public notice.
Okay. Now, is our professionals meeting with them in this report?
I haven't asked for that yet.
I can.
Yeah.
Do you want me to suggest that I meet with you?
I mean, they need to, they said they were modifying their plans, sorry. They want to make changes to their plans, so I would recommend that they do that, they resubmit, and then obviously Charlie and I would issue new letters. If we still have significant concerns, then we can reach out to Sal at that point and have a meeting in between now and then. I don't know that they're going to be ready for the,
Yeah.
you know what I mean,
Right.
for the 9th, assuming, you know, they still have to from what I understand, the changes are going to be significant.
Right.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we also had some questions and concerns outlined in the letter regarding the traffic statement that was provided, and we haven't received anything yet. So we can contact the attorney and let them know of those issues, and hopefully they'll follow up and address them.
Okay. Okay. Is anyone in the audience for case number BA 1911, K10 Holdings LLC? Seeing none, this case we will take jurisdiction over the case. This case will be adjourned to December 9th at 7:30 PM with no further notice. Okay,
Thank you, that's all I have. And I did hand out tonight a list of possible dates for next year. So there's a few that we may have to move around. If the board members could just kind of take a look and we could discuss them at our November 28th meeting.
okay.
Okay? Thank
Thank
you.
you.
That's all I have.
Okay, resolutions. Case number BA 1802, Robert and Dolores Kowalski, resolution granting a use variance approval. Eligible voters, Hughes, Mertens, Orozco, Saya, Cantor, Laughlin, and Nansen. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Hughes,
I'll second.
seconded by Mr. Mertens. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Chairman Nansen?
Yes.
Motion carries, resolutions memorialized.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the remaining cases on the agenda, we're going to kind of move them out of order here. I'm going to call case number BA 1915, Squonkam Fire Company. It's a use variance and minor site plan. Application of Squonkam Fire Company is applicant and owner seeking use variance and minor site plan approval to install a 96 kW gas-powered, that should be natural gas-powered, standby generator along the southerly lot line on premises known as Block 49, Lot 9, 271 Squonkam Road, Lakewood, Farmingdale Road. Since a firehouse emergency service is not listed as a permitted use within the SED zone, the installation of the generator constitutes expansion of non-conforming use. Expiration date, February 5th, 2020. Yes, sir.
Hi, Richard Braslow representing the applicant, and I have with me this evening Charlie Bell, who's a surveyor and planner,
Okay.
to be able to address the project and any specific issues.
Mr. Tropley, you mind swearing him in?
Raise your right hand, please. Swear the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you
I do.
God. State your name on the record, please.
Charles V. Bell Jr.
Thank you. May I have a seat? Mike's
Yeah.
there.
Mike,
You can both sit there.
you can both sit.
Right here in line,
Thank you.
The mic's right in the middle of the table there.
Do we want to enter these first?
So I understand you brought some exhibits with you this evening that you plan on questioning your witness about, correct?
We did, yes.
Okay, why don't we go over those now so that we can move
Okay.
forward expeditiously?
Do you want me to qualify him first? Do you want to give his
Well,
background?
let's at least just mark them for now, and then you can qualify them, and then he can discuss them. So what is it, counsel, that you have tonight?
Okay, so what we did is we brought an updated survey with greater particulars, so a better understanding of the site.
Okay.
The generator is clearly marked.
Okay.
It's kind of an updated survey.
So
I think
we'll
it'll be a little easier to follow. And we also...
That'll be, let's mark that updated survey as A6. And again, just a very brief description, and you can qualify your witness, and he can get through that.
That'd be fine. So
Next,
that's,
A7 would be your next marking.
okay, and that would be some photos of the site. Again, we felt it would be easier to follow some of the testimony and understand the project with these photos. And actually what they are is photos with a little narrative underneath explaining what the photos represent.
Okay, how many
Stay here, Rich.
photos do you have?
It actually is 1, 2, 3, 5 pages, and 1, 2,
8, 7.
oh, I'm sorry. How many photos?
5
8
pages
photos.
containing
yeah.
8 photos, okay,
Okay.
of site.
We also,
And then your next marking, if you have any additional,
We have one more, and this is a overview or a picture of the actual site.
okay,
Yeah.
an aerial, okay, very good. And with that, sir, You may continue.
Okay.
Let's
I can just give you
qualify.
some, Mr. Bell, could you indicate what you do for a living and explain your background?
Okay, I'm a licensed surveyor and planner in the state of New Jersey. I have been licensed since 1982 as both a surveyor and planner. My office is located at 40 Meredith Drive in Tinton Falls, New Jersey. I've appeared just in front of almost every board in Monmouth County and the northern Ocean County boards.
Okay, we accept your credentials.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, what I'd like to do, I think it'd be easier if I can get Mr. Bell, could you provide a narrative of the project, explain the purpose, and then
Sure.
try to address some of the issues that were raised in
Okay.
the reports from staff?
Okay, the property is at 149 Yellowbrook Road, also known as Squonkam Road, also known as Lakewood Farmingdale Road, and also known as Monmouth County Highway 547. It's on tax map sheet 604. The fire company was established in 1950. They moved to this location based on information provided by them in 1955. We are proposing to construct a natural gas powered generator that's going to be 4 feet wide, 10 feet long, and 6 foot high. It'll be located on an 8-foot by 14-foot concrete pad. There will be a 6-foot high chain link fence around the pad with the green slats to conceal the generator. The generator will be tested weekly, Monday through Friday, and anywhere between the hours of 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. The property is located in the SED Special Economic Zone. Permitted uses, the fire station is not a permitted use. This station dates back to 1955 at this location. Adjacent uses, Lot 10 to the north is a Howell Ice Arena. Lot 8.01 to the south is a golf cart dealer. Across the street, Lot 8 in Block 48 is a Lair State Park. The SED zoning requirements, a lot area is 120,000 square feet. We have 0.089 square feet, so this is an existing variance. Lot frontage is 200 feet per the zoning, and we have 242.46 feet. Setbacks, the required setback is, front setback is 60, we have 46.7, which is an existing variance. Side yards, 50 feet is required by the zoning. The northerly setbacks are 101.7, the southerly setback is 20.1. The rear setback is 50 feet, but due to the triangular shape of the lot, there is no rear setback to this property.
I'm going to let Jen interrupt here real quick.
Okay.
So you're here because firehouses or fire companies are not listed as a permitted use in the zone. This technically constitutes an expansion of a non-conforming use. So it's not a straight D1 variance because the use is already there. It's just an expansion. So the case law requires that the applicant demonstrate that the site can accommodate whatever increase is being proposed. To me, this is a de minimis increase, and it's an essential service considering in the event of a power outage, they still need to get the doors up so the fire trucks can get out. So I would ask this. Do you feel in your professional capacity that the site can accommodate this 8x14 pad to have a generator on site that was said to be natural gas, correct?
Yes,
And it's located in such a location that technically you need relief because it's more than the 10 feet off the building?
or 5.
5 feet off the building, it's like a 36 feet off the building. Now, is that to accommodate the fact that the volunteers that work in the firehouse have to be able to hear calls come in, and that in the event of an emergency, the generator would be running and potentially could impact the ability to hear emergency calls come in?
Okay, the reason that they want the generator 36 feet off one corner of the building and 47 feet off the other, if you look on page 5 of the photos that I provided,
Yep.
the top photo is taken somewhere approximately where the generator will be situated. This area of the firehouse is basically the only area that the generator could be put in without it being an eyesore. But this area is used as a picnic and somewhat storage area for the firemen.
Right, but technically, if I'm looking at that photograph, it could be located closer to the building. The reason it was located as far off the building as it is, but yet being 10 feet off of the southerly property line, was to maintain operations, existing operations of the firehouse, correct?
Correct. And-
Okay,
and in
so,
this- Okay.
yes, thank you. So, in addition, the variances that you stated they're existing nonconformities with respect to the lot area, the front yard setback, and the side yard setback. We had initially identified the property across the street as a farm, but it's come to our attention that that was recently acquired, and is no longer a farm, so a buffer along that frontage would not be required even though it's an existing nonconformity. A couple of other questions that we have with respect to the generator is, you indicated that the testing would be done during the hours that the town requires for testing, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., correct?
That is correct, yes.
And that the pad area is 8 by 14.
Correct.
So the only issue that I would have, Mr. Chair, is that the chain link fence with the slats is something that we do not typically permit as far as an enclosure for anything. They do not stand up over time. They actually become unsightly. And given the fact that this is going to be located within 10 feet of a property line, we would ask for a solid fence, whether it be vinyl, board on board.
No objection.
And the applicant has indicated they have no objection. With that being said, I take no exception to the relief being requested. I do feel that it's an important piece of the puzzle that's necessary, as we found over the course of the past several major storm events when there are outages, that is essential for our emergency services to have the tools that they need to be able to service the public. And so, that being said, I don't take any exception to the relief that the applicant is requesting.
Okay. What about trees on the property line?
Do you
Or
feel like?
shrubbery?
So they're adjacent to a commercial user, and it's basically like their parking area. I think if they use a solid fence, I think that would be perfectly acceptable with respect to screening from the adjacent neighbor.
Yeah, the photo on the bottom of page 5 is taken from the parking lot facing to the south. There's an existing evergreen buffer on the golf course property. The photo on page 3 of the photographs is the other side of that buffer that's on the golf course property, golf cart property, rather.
Okay. Charlie?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my only thing I think the applicant should be required to, as a condition of approval, submit a as-built survey to the township, just verifying all the locations. They provided a survey with some indication of where the proposed, generator and the fencing and the pad is going to go. The township is going to need something just to confirm that it was in compliance with representations made to the board. So
Okay,
that's all I would have.
that's fine.
Okay. Okay, any questions from the board?
Nope.
Okay, can I get a motion to open to public?
Open to the public? Second.
Motion by Mr. Moretti, seconded by Mr. Hughes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Anyone in the audience wish to come forward and ask a question or make a comment in this case? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Motion by
Second.
Mr. Cantor, seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Okay. Any further from, would you,
Based on what's occurred, no, nothing further.
okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
I make a motion, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we grant the requested variance.
Okay.
I'll second that, sir.
Have a motion by Mr. Cantor, seconded by Mr. Hughes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Mr. Mertens.
Yes.
Mr. Moretti.
Yes.
Mr. Orozco.
Yes.
Mr. Cantor.
Yes.
Chairman Nansen.
Based on all testimony that's been placed on the record and witnesses and information placed, my vote is yes.
Motion carries. Application's approved.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Good luck, guys. Find my agenda. moving along. Okay, next case before the board, case number BA 1919, Orchard Estates LLC. Use variance and bulk variance. Application Orchard Estates LLC is applicant owners, and New Jersey American Water Company is tenant and co-applicant seeking the use variance approval to eliminate prior resolution conditions restricting the hours of operation of an existing office building and millwork building alongside ancillary bulk variances approval for an existing storage tent structure located within the required 50-foot residential and farmland buffer and also within the required side yard setback on premises known as Block 177, Lot 69, 149, Yellowbrook Road. Expiration date, February 4th, 2020. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Neil O'Brien. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Archer and Greiner. I'm from Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm here on behalf of New Jersey American Water Company as co-applicant here, and we are seeking to remove the condition of approval you referenced with respect to hours of operation on this property. But as you'll hear in testimony this evening, and I think we can be fairly brief here, the uses on the property are changing. My client, the water company, is going to be purchasing and occupying more of the property. And as you'll hear, the overnight operations use that we're requesting to be permitted to conduct on the property are limited to if there is some sort of an emergency in the water or the sewer system. For example, a water main break or a water sewer backup, or if a motor vehicle hits a fire hydrant, and the water company has to get a crew out to that location. The overnight operation here would be simply that a couple of crews or a crew who would be on call that evening would be called into the facility. They would park their vehicles at the facility. They'd get into a utility vehicle or perhaps two utility vehicles, and they would respond to that emergency situation, which of course would be off-site. Nothing's going to happen on-site overnight that would require crews to be there. We're also asking for a small expansion to hours of operation in what will be the meter testing shop. Utilities, as you know, are required to test meters at the request of their customers, and this facility will have one of the buildings devoted to just that use. But here we won't be asking for overnight operation. We're simply asking for expansion of the hours of operation until 8 p.m. in the evening. So we'd conclude at 8 p.m. in the evening, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Going to ask a quick question.
Absolutely.
What's the zone here, SED?
SCD. So public utilities are a permitted use, and we are one of a couple of uses on the property. There is Hall Construction, who is related to the owner of the property, Orchard Estates, and then there's KSI Engineering. There's also a residence on the property which was approved back in the 90s by the board, which is not permitted on the property, but was approved for overnight security, so that the caretaker, if you will, lived in that residence. And as you're also going to hear in testimony this evening, the residence will be vacated and is actually eventually proposed to be removed at the end of the current lease term. And the property owner and KSI Engineering will also vacate the property at the end of their lease terms, and then the water company will be the sole occupant and user of the property, at which time, of course, it would not need use variance approval for its operation. In the 1990s, the board granted a use variance approval to allow these multiple uses on the property, including the millworks use, which has actually ceased, and including this residence. So because there was more than one use variance approval was required, and because there was a residential use on the property, use variance was required. The various uses will continue, as I've said, should the board be disposed to grant this use variance approval and approve our application, but again, only to the end of their lease terms. So we could deal with completeness, Mr. Chairman, or I can have our two witnesses sworn in, however you'd like to proceed.
I'm going to consult with the professionals here.
Well, before we begin, jurisdiction is noted and the notices are in order.
Thank you, Counsel.
First and foremost. Secondly, counsel, do you propose any additional exhibits this evening?
We do. We have submitted two additional exhibits. the aerial you see, which I'm going to call A10 if I may, because it will be
Please.
presented second in order. And then the first is it's, I suppose it's an additional exhibit. It's simply a copy of the old site plan for the property, which, as you'll hear from our engineer and planner, is still accurate based on survey and his inspection of the property, but it'll help to sort of unwrap what we're doing out on the property and what building is used for what, and where these activities will where these activities will occur,
Okay.
and importantly, perhaps what's ultimately to be removed.
Okay, we'll mark those now, A10, A11, we'll hand them out, and as soon as the board has a moment or two to look at them, you can proceed.
Or-
So y'all eventually will be taking over the office building?
Yeah, so the property owner will be, assuming the board's disposed to approving our application. The water company will close on the property within a couple of months here. Shortly after that, the property owner will vacate the property, I would say between 3 months and a year from closing. And then the last remaining tenant, KSI Engineering, their lease expires in 2023. All they occupy is a portion of the office building, but at that time, they will also vacate, and the water company will be the only user out there, yes.
Well, Jennifer, question to you. In the SED zone, multi-tenants are allowed, aren't they?
Yes.
So then there's really no holdback to that. Okay.
So again, I'd ask, would you like to deal with completeness? We asked for some waivers. We submitted justification for
I'm
them.
going to turn it over to Jennifer. Well,
Well, before we get into testimony, counsel, why don't we ask who your witnesses are this evening? I'll swear them in this
Sure.
way, there's going to be a colloquy, at least that'll be on the record.
Sure. I have Carmen Tierno, who's the Senior Director of Business Performance for New Jersey American Water Company. Of course, is the applicant. He'll be testifying with respect to operations and the use of the facility. And then I have Mr. Cliff Quay of Stantec, who is our licensed professional planner. He's also a licensed professional engineer. And gentlemen, if you would stand, raise your right hand and be sworn.
Sir, the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Sir, starting with you, may we have your name and your spelling, please?
Sure. Clifton Quay, that's Q-U-A-Y.
Thank you.
Carmen Tierno, T-I-E-R-N-O.
Thank you. All sworn in, Mr. Chairman.
okay, Charlie, Jen?
So I just had some questions. So the site plan that we were provided, I guess from
Actually, this on the site plan that was provided from the 90s. There's various buildings throughout the site that are shown, but the most recent survey from 2018 showed a storage tent along the southern side of the property. Were any approvals granted for that? Do you have any,
We don't know whether they were approved or not, but what I can tell you from my client's observation is that they're gone. And what I can represent to you, that to the extent they were not gone, if my client closes on the property, assuming application is approved, they will not be reused or they will be removed.
can we say they'll be removed within 6 months or getting resolution compliance?
Sure.
Okay.
Again, we believe that they've already been removed.
Okay, all right. And then as far as the existing residential dwelling, can you give us any indication on, like, you say it's going to be vacated at the end of the lease, how long that lease is going through till?
Sure. So the residence is associated, obviously, with the property owner who is caretaker, if you will, for the site. So the right to use the residence under the agreement of sale, and I probably misspoke here, it's not a lease, but they have the right to use the building for up to a year after closing. It's our understanding that they will vacate sooner than that, but they do have that right under the agreement of sale.
Would you agree to a condition in any approval to remove it after a year from sale?
Sure. Could you give us 13 months,
Matt, what do you think on that? That's acceptable? Okay.
just in case?
Yeah.
So 13 months after closing.
Yeah. Closing's currently scheduled for January.
Okay, so 13 months after closing can be part of the resolution.
Right, to be demolished.
Yes.
You're saying that
To
it
be,
needs
to be vacated.
vacated?
Vacated. So ultimately, the water company's got some modifications they want to make to this site. The removal of the residents, and I'll have Mr. Tierno describe this in detail, but the removal of the residents will be tied to that. So obviously, we'll be back before the board for an approval for the modifications that we're going to make to the site. And at that time, we'll show you the
Well-
residents being removed and whatever else is going to happen.
At that time, it wouldn't come to this board, would it?
Yes, because it's starting here, we'd leave it here.
Okay.
I just need some clarification, I'm sorry.
Sure.
So, I understand that the building will be vacated 13 months after closing, which is
Yep.
scheduled currently for January.
Right.
I think the question was, is the building coming down, and we need a time frame associated with that?
It is coming down. It'll be part of an application to the board that my client thinks will be in within 4 to 6 months, that'll show some other modifications to the site. So depending on the approval of that application and the timing of the other construction on the site will be tied to that approval. Outside, Carmen will get you up here in a minute, but outside, what can we represent as an outside date to have the residents removed?
We intend to demolish that as soon as they vacate and we're permitted to demolish it. No intention of keeping that structure any moment longer than we have to.
I mean, the concern that I would have is tying the demolition of that structure to some future application that we don't have before us, is that we don't have any control over if and when that application comes to us, or to the planning board for that matter. And, you know, I want to make sure as part of this application, there's a commitment to take the structure down. And so, like, tying it to a future application that's not going to come before this board makes me uncomfortable.
Can you give us 3 months after it's
Sure.
vacant?
I just want like a
Does that
date.
work, Carmen?
Yeah, that works. I didn't know if we needed to come here to demolish it, but if we don't need to come here
No.
to demolish it, we'll
All you would need to do is pull demolition permits
We'll
from the building
pull a permit
department.
and demo it.
What did you say, 3 months? 3 months?
3 months after
Okay.
the building's, after it's vacated.
Okay. Thank you.
Within 3 months.
So, and then I just have some general questions around the existing use of the site and what's proposed in terms of all the buildings. So you have
Yep.
3 buildings to the south of the property, existing frame building, a frame building, and a frame dwelling. Those are all currently occupied by Hall Construction?
Yeah. Actually, Mr. Cunliffe, if you don't mind, we're going to address all that in direct testimony, if that's okay.
All right. I mean, you know, Mr. Chair, most of the questions regarding completeness are in terms of, they're asking a lot of relief for site plan. You know, based on the applicant's testimony, as the meeting progresses, you know, if they're not proposing any significant site improvements, a lot of it sounds like it's removal of storage tents, removal of a dwelling. I don't know that it necessarily, you know, has implications to a site plan. They've already indicated that they're going to be coming, you know, with a pending application, you know, hopefully within the next 3 to 6 months. What I would say is, if they're not proposing any site improvements to the site other than removing the storage tent and the dwelling, I would take no exception to the granting of relief of the various waivers for the site plan items. Now, having said that, if there's something comes up, you know, I reserve the right to make comment on it.
Yeah, and we can represent that we're not proposing any modifications to the site at this point.
Okay. And then you are coming back with the site plan, so at that point in time, then we could have everything addressed. Okay.
Sure. So, Mr. Tierno, if you could give a description to the board of the water company's operation out here, and then its operation generally in the Monmouth County area.
Sure, thank you. Good evening. I think most are familiar with New Jersey American Water, you know, a regional water and sewer utility. We serve primarily Howell Township and Lakewood in this general vicinity. We also serve the barrier island of Ocean County as well as New Egypt. We're proposing to center our operations here for the area, and that generally includes office staff as well as our field crews who will go out and do work, as well as what we call a meter shop where by BPU regulations we're required to test meters, and we're proposing to do that at this facility.
So, tell the board, you said work crews would depart from the property. What's the timing of the departure and the return back to the operations center?
Generally speaking, our crews are scheduled from about 7 a.m. to 3:30. Again, sometimes they work some overtime and come in a little bit later.
What would the nature of a typical task be for one of those crews? A couple of examples.
General tasks are, we're constantly inspecting and exercising our valves. We're constantly inspecting and testing our fire hydrants, and we do have to respond to emergencies when there's leaks or breaks or fire hydrants that are run over by cars.
But there's no customer service component here. You can't go here to pay your bill or ask a question, or as an American Water Company customer.
Correct. No customer service at this location.
So specifically with respect to the emergency overnight activities, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, this operation, they're fairly infrequent. Generally speaking, this system is a bit newer than some of our other systems around the state. We did a look at the last 4 to 5 years of emergency activity in this region, and on an average basis, you would expect to see an overnight issue about twice a month. And that would include, again, our attorney mentioned it before, in the case of a leak or a break, if it was deemed to be something that could wait for the morning, we typically wait for the morning. But if it does interrupt service or compromises fire protection, we would ask a crew to go out and deal with that then. And it would include employees driving in with their personal vehicles, parking, and getting in a crew truck and departing the site to go deal with the issue.
So to be very clear, we're not asking the board to allow us to move heavy equipment, to move around pipes, to do stuff that we typically do during the day. In the overnight hours, it's limited to what you've just described.
Correct.
Okay. If you could describe for the board, and if you don't mind, start up front or plan south, if you will, which is also the south of the facility. Tell the board what each of those buildings is used for now and what it'll be used for by the water company if in fact it will be used.
All right. I'll start on the south side. You got a nice shake, so I'm sorry. That is the existing residential structure that would be, as we talked about earlier, would be demolished. This structure, and this structure are used by Hawk Construction. They will be vacated. We do not plan to use them, and they could be the subject of a future demolition or application.
But again, it's our understanding that the storage tent has been removed, and that's the one that encroaches into the setback or the buffer. And so we do not need a variance for that setback condition. Okay, so moving back to the rest of the site that the water company already does or will utilize.
Sure. I'll go over here. This is an existing structure that we're currently using. We're renting that, and we use that to store meters for our crews that replace meters around the system. This structure here is currently used by Hall Construction for vehicle maintenance. We are planning to convert that to our locker room for our employees.
So the crews you spoke about would drive in, use the locker if necessary before they depart?
Correct. This structure here is what we intend to move our, what we call our meter shop. This is a pretty quiet operation, basically test benches where we put, if you've ever seen your water meter, when we replace water meters, we have to take them out, and we actually have to test them to make sure they're accurate on the way out. So that happens, will happen in that building. So that'll be there'll be some equipment that we have to install in there, and that's where we intend to do that operation.
And we're asking for approval to possibly use that building till about 8 p.m. at night. Not every night, but some nights.
Correct. Workload dependent. Sometimes those individuals work some overtime. It's occasional into the evening.
How about Saturday hours?
They do work some Saturdays.
Okay, so they would come in, say, 9 to 12 on Saturday?
Correct.
Moving back further to the back of the site, we've got the two biggest buildings.
Yeah, I'll go, the front building, I think what most people are familiar with, is an office building, and as our attorney noted, several tenants there now, Hall Construction, KSI, and as well as ourselves. And we would intend to bring additional office staff into that building as other leases expire.
Okay. And ultimately, obviously, use the entire building?
Correct.
Okay. And last but not least, the building that's been historically used as a warehouse building?
Yeah, and the use will be similar. It will be storage of materials and equipment and vehicles for our crews that work in the field.
Okay, so to recap just the hours of operation, typically 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. for office work, which is what's done out there now, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. with limited Saturday hours for the meter testing room, and then the overnight emergent approximately twice per month, but obviously when necessary for the emergency response.
Correct.
How many employees do you have out here?
Currently, we have about 30, and ultimately, we'll probably have about 65.
Any issues with parking? Folks easily able to find parking spots when they come in the morning?
Yes.
Again, we spoke about having no customer service component at this facility. It's all just American Water operations.
Correct.
What kind of vehicles will be out here?
In the parking lot, visible people's personal vehicles, occasional smaller utility vehicles like pickup trucks or sedans with the New Jersey American logos on them. In this rear building will be our larger crew trucks that will be stored inside, and they're typical utility vehicles that you probably see between whether you see our vehicles or whether you see the electric company vehicles, very similar crew trucks.
We have two small excavators and a backhoe that ultimately will be in this building too. They'll be kept on trailers for deployments to the site, right? They're not used on site.
Correct. We do have some excavation equipment, a couple backhoes, and they are trailer mounted and would be towed out to any job site.
Any hazardous or flammable materials stored here? Any chemicals?
No.
Any significant noise generators?
No.
Any changes to site lighting?
No.
And any new signage proposed?
No.
Mr. Chairman, any questions for Mr. Chairman?
Jim?
So the frame building that's located along the southerly property line and the shed that's there currently, you had indicated that these structures will be vacated but not demolished, correct?
Immediately they'll be vacated, ultimately probably demolished.
The reason I'm asking is because I think that there's a farm next door, and we typically require a 50-foot farm buffer on any property lines adjoining a farm, which, and I don't want to speak for the board, but I will just say is not what I would consider an easier variance to obtain from these individuals. So if you're planning on taking it down, I would make that representation. If you're not, then you need to seek that relief.
We don't have any use for those structures, so they're coming down one way or another.
So I just wanted to bring that up because I know that's typically a concern of the board, that farm buffer.
No, but wouldn't that be addressed at the site plan? Whenever they come back with site plan?
Well, they're kind of here, they're here just for the use variance and not for the site plan? Okay, so then I would just put that on the record because I typically would like to see the relief if we're gonna have it. If you're gonna remove those structures, that's gonna be something that we're gonna look to see when you come back for site plan. And since you're going to occupy the entire site, ultimately, when the leases of the other tenants run out, you're not anticipating needing any lease lines or anything like that on this property moving forward?
No, and even at present, all of the other occupants after closing will be in the office building, so there won't be a lease in place for parking spaces or anything like that.
Got ya. That's all I have.
Charles?
So I just want to reiterate it, beat it into the record. No outdoor storage of any heavy equipment or construction equipment. That's all going to be inside the warehouse building, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then during nighttime operations, emergency work, you may have to trailer some equipment to get it off-site to do a repair, right?
Correct.
Would you agree to put them on strobe lights, turn off all audible backup beepers and things like that? You are
Charles,
adjacent to
we
some...
can't do that. We found that out with L&L. That's a OSHA.
Is it?
We can't control that. That's directed by OSHA. Safety, even with the strobes, it doesn't hold up. OSHA will fine you.
What we can represent is that we'll take every measure to make sure that there's no disturbance to existing properties when equipment is taken out of the site.
So that it'll be minimal in nature. It's not like you're moving stockpiles and things around the property. You're moving it to get it on a trailer, then to move it to
I
the
think
site.
it's actually already on the trailer.
Okay, all
Yeah,
right.
it's just a question of taking the trailer out of the warehouse building and driving to the site.
That's all I have for right now.
Okay.
Mr. Quay,
Yes.
you have, let's get you qualified here,
Could I?
Okay.
if that's ever
Hey,
necessary.
one of my board members.
I was just wondering, what about the traffic flow? You say you're going to increase from 30 people there now to 65 people? You're
Correct.
going to also have all your trucks stored in the warehouse area now? Have you done the traffic flow in that area? Especially now you're going to be bringing in the backhoe and on heavy-duty trucks. Are you going to be heading out to 33? Are you
Well-
going to, what's your plan on that?
Well, in terms of total amount of people, we will transition people in as other lessees, the other renters, the other tenants move out. So that would be a no net effect. In terms of equipment and trucks, as Hall removes their equipment, we'll basically be, coming in kind. So I don't know Hall's operation intimately, but my observations of it over the last several months, we have similar equipment and would be basically a replacement of what they're moving out.
Let me ask a question to kind of help. Is there an existing construction company there now?
I don't know what their operations are fully, to be honest with you.
No, but is there a construction company there?
Hall Construction.
Okay. Do they have excavators?
I don't know all the equipment they have. I observed dump trucks and similar equipment.
Okay. There's an existing operation there now.
And again, our excavators are relatively small. We're not talking about heavy-duty equipment, right?
Yeah, these are relatively small excavators for smaller work. Typically, when we have a large project that requires more significant equipment, we contract that out and it wouldn't be near our site.
And we're limited to 3. It's only 3.
Correct.
currently. Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Quay,
Yeah.
let's give the board the benefit of your many qualifications and your experience, if you would.
Well, as the attorney mentioned, I'm a licensed professional engineer and a licensed professional planner. State of New Jersey. I went to Drexel University, got a degree in civil engineering with a concentration in urban and regional planning and water resources. I've been doing this work longer than I care to admit at this point, but for over 20 years. I have been qualified in front of numerous boards in the state of New Jersey and also elsewhere as both a planner and an engineer. And I actually had a stint up in Woodcliff Lake for about 15 months where I represented a board as a professional planner. So,
We accept your credentials.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Quay, looking at Exhibit A11, the aerial exhibit, if you would you orient the board to the site here so we can give context for what's out there, what's around us, and
sure. So,
what's proposed?
Sure. So the site here is on the west side of Yellowbrook Road. We've got a gun range across the street from us. We have a construction company immediately to the south of us. We have a pallet company immediately to the north of us. We have residences to the southwest of the site. And then just a little further to the north is actually a water treatment plant that's part of a New Jersey American Water facility, and a driveway back to what I believe is a Girl Scout facility back on the west side here.
And if you could point out to the board the accesses, the buffering around our site.
Sure. So there are two access points into the site, one on the north end here and one most of the way down to the south end at this alignment. The rear of the site is largely comprised of a stormwater detention facility and wooded area at the back. And, as was already pointed out, the warehouse building, the office building, what's going to become the meter building, and then storage in the existing garage building there. And then there's several buildings that are going to be vacated at the south side of the site.
What's your analysis of the use variance approval that we're requesting here? And again, just for the record, Mr. Chairman, the two storage tents have been or will be removed, so we don't need variance approvals for those, and we're not modifying the existing side yard setback that were pointed out in, if not both of your professionals' letters, one of them. So we will not be requesting those variances. But what's your analysis of the use variance we're requesting, Mr. Quay?
Sure. So the utility use itself is permitted in the zone, but we are seeking some modification of a prior existing approval, which is why we're here talking to you about this. You know, the use itself, which is a support use for a water utility that services the public in the area, is one that I think could be construed as being an inherently beneficial use. It serves the public good. You know, they promote public welfare and maintaining the sewer service and the water supply for the area. So, you know, I think presumptively meets the, you know, the positive requirement that the operations center for the water department is one that is beneficial and, as a matter of fact, permitted in this zone.
But we're also, we've also represented in our application materials that we can satisfy the positive criteria in other ways. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So the property is also particularly well suited as an operations center. It's located, from a location standpoint, this is a location that suits the utilities' need for servicing, you know, servicing this component or this area of their system. It's somewhat centrally located for this area. They have other operations centers, and this fills a gap for them. As I said, it's a permitted use on the property. The property already contains all the buildings and infrastructure necessary to support the operations center, so we don't need modifications to the site in order for them to move in and start doing what they want to do from an operations standpoint, which is a bit of a unique situation. And they're already on the site currently in the office building with some of their components of their operations center. So this is really just a continuation of something that is already, you know, they're already there, and they're just looking to centralize all of their people in one location for that purpose.
So the particular suitability, does the use of the property further any purposes of zoning?
Sure. So there's a few of them. You know, you know, you have these limited overnight activities that allow them to respond to immediate emergent needs and so forth. And that, just along with the maintenance of their system, promotes the public health, safety, and general welfare, which is one of the purposes of zoning under MLUL. And as I said, if the operations center were currently the only use on the property, we don't believe a use variance would be necessary at all. In addition, you know, it allows, you know, secure safety from fire, flood, panic, other natural and man-made disasters, which, once again, just maintaining water and sewer systems in emergent
Mr. Chair,
situations.
if I could just cut through this.
Sure.
The only reason that they're here for a use variance is because of the residents. If the residents was not on that property, they wouldn't even be here. They've already made a commitment to eliminate the residents within a year. So the use that they're talking about is permitted in the zone. So as far as location as particular suitability, advancing goals of zoning, the zoning anticipated this use at this location. And once that house goes away, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that there was a commitment as to when that was going to occur, this is not a use variance application.
Exactly.
So I think you should focus on the hours, because I think that's really an essential component of your application. And so the testimony that we've heard thus far is that the restriction on the use of the property, the hour restriction of the use of the property is a user that's no longer there, correct?
Correct.
And what they're saying is that while the representation at the time in the 90s was that it was going to be used Monday through Friday, like 7 to 7, I think, and now they're asking for that to be restricted. Oh, it's 7:30 to 4 for the mill work and 8 to 6 for the office work, Monday through Friday. Here, they're asking for, you know, 7-ish, let's say 7 to 3:30 on a regular basis, but probably a little longer in isolated incidents. In addition, during the week, and you can correct me anytime if I'm incorrect. And then on Saturday from 9 to 12 on occasion, but the crux of it is that in the event of an emergency, they have to be able to get on the site, get their equipment to solve an issue.
Jen?
Yes.
Real quick. But if they've agreed to dispose of the residential component, they're going to dispose of the buildings that would be
Correct.
technically in a farmland buffer, so they don't need relief from that.
Correct.
Wouldn't that just revert straight to what the
Well,
SCD is?
there is an approval on this property that has very specific hours of operation enumerated in the resolution
But it was
that don't
also-
work for this use. If this use was the applicant that came in at the time, I do not think that those hour restrictions would have been imposed on the site. It was really geared towards the millwork that was being
I
done.
understand, but they're abandoning that use.
There,
Mr. Chairman, there will be a temporary period where these other uses are still on site.
Correct.
Yeah,
The
it's a
residents in
year
particular,
overlap,
so-
that's.
Yeah.
so it's,
Okay.
in a year, we wouldn't be having this conversation, but I'm getting the impression that they want to get on the site before then.
We want to buy the property.
Correct, and so, you know, the request is to remove the hour restriction, which was imposed on a user that's no longer gonna be there. The hours, and again, let me just go through 7 to 3:30 on a regular basis with some overtime occasionally. And can you give me an indication?
Let me just clarify
Sure.
that, Jen, if you don't mind. So the utility crews generally work between 7 and 3:30. The office hours are 7 till 6 p.m. The meter testing will be from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and then just the operational part will be limited overnight use for precisely the types of situations.
And sometimes 9 to 12 on Saturday.
It's 9 to 12 on Saturday for the meter room and for the office.
So it's really just,
The hours.
it's the hours that were imposed on a user that were, let's say, less friendly to their surrounding uses than this user because of the noise associated with the millwork. So I would take no exception should the board determine that the applicant has met its burden. I feel that it has met its burden, and I take no exception to the relief that they're asking or the removal of that condition, let's just say, given the nature of this particular user, especially considering they're a permitted use in the zone. So that's kind of what we envisioned was going to occupy a property such as this on Yellowbrook Road
Okay.
within the town.
If you don't mind, given that there might be some public interest
Yeah,
in
no.
this application, we'd like
Yeah.
to just get testimony on the record for the negative criteria.
I just want to, even though we grant American Water relief, that doesn't mean the existing tenants that are there can follow their hours of operation.
The restriction was on a user that's no longer there.
The user's there, but the use, that particular component of the use.
Well, right, the use is no longer there. But, I mean, obviously, the board has to make a decision as far as how they want to move forward. And there's people here in the audience that are
Yeah.
listening to the application that have, want to come up and, or maybe don't, but have the ability to come up and give you their opinion.
Exactly.
But I just want to go back to the use variance there. They've committed to remove the residence, which is the impetus for the use variance. I don't necessarily know, I mean, it's totally your case, you can do what you want, but I don't know that it's necessary to go through proofs on a D1 for a permitted use in the zone.
We do still technically have a D variance, so I think we've got to, if you don't mind, just briefly get them on the record. So Cliff, if you don't mind, what's your assessment of the negative criteria?
So, as was mentioned before, the primary impetus of the time restraints on this was the millwork operation, which I'm guessing created some noise. It was probably, an open garage situation. The meter shop, which is proposed to go in there in its place, is a closed conditioned operation, and the testing of meters does not generate any perceptible noise, certainly not beyond the walls of the building. So there's a significant change in that component of what was on the site previously. The rest of the operations on the site are going to be similar or less impactful than what's there currently. This was testified to, the amount of traffic that's coming in and out of here from an office standpoint is going to remain static. The amount of construction activity that's going in and out of here should remain static. But for the occasional emergent situation where I have to come in here at night in order to service an emergency situation within the community, I really don't see where there should be any impacts to the surrounding properties. As As a matter of fact, we've got a gun range across the street and a pallet recycling facility next door, which, having been out on the site a couple of times, I would say is probably generate more noise than this operation ever will. In addition, as was stated, it's an allowed permitted use within the zone, but for the removal of the residence component. So, in my opinion, I think the relief can be granted with no substantial detriment to the public and no substantial impairment to the Howell Township Zone Plan and Zoning Ordinance, particularly since it's permitted use in the zone.
So is there a strong public interest in this use? Is there a strong governmental interest in this use?
Absolutely. Anybody that turns a faucet on or flushes their toilet has a strong interest in it.
And Annie, you've testified that in your opinion, there's no detriments here to surrounding property, so any need for mitigating action?
I don't,
conditions?
in my opinion, I don't believe so, no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's what we have for you in affirmative testimony.
Any further from Jen? Any further, Charlie?
Yeah, just one last thing. So you said maximum at all times at full capacity, you have 65 employees on the site?
We will have, yes.
All right, so, and then do you have any idea of how many existing parking spaces are on the site?
There's,
The original site plan approval, I think, was for
That's
169 parking
169.
spaces? So would you
That's-
say that's
I
more
looked
than
at the site
adequately
that-
parked for the uses on the site?
I would say yes, it is.
Okay.
And
That's
I
all I
know from your ordinance that the parking drivers haven't changed for the uses that are on site. So you still have office use, you still have manufacturing use, and the ratios are the same, so the number of spaces would be the same.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Quick
Board
question. From where are the emergency service currently? That you would be moving from a location to service the emergencies in Howell?
They're right down the street and rented space, I don't know, probably about a quarter mile down the road.
Okay, thank you.
Will any of your operation be moving from next to the Board of Education, that site there? Will any of that operation be moving into this?
We have, you're referring to the Board of Education property we bought,
Yeah.
we just recently purchased. We have, we're going to use that for a different use, a different group of employees associated with that water treatment plant that's there.
Okay. So it's not, there's no movement of that over to this site?
Well, right now, Board of Education people are there,
Right,
so they're moving here, I think.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, can I have a motion to open to public?
I'll make a motion to open the public.
Motion by Mr. Hughes,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Roscoe. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Yeah, we may have
Anyone
some questions.
in the audience wish to come forward, ask question, or make a comment to the witnesses? Please come forward, be sworn in, and ask your question.
Okay, sir, would you raise your right hand, please? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Yes, and using the mic, sir, may we have your name, your address, and please spell your last name for us?
Sure. My name is John Callahan. I live at 18 Burke Drive. It's Farmingdale Post Office address, but it's the property adjacent to the back of the subject property, where it's block 177, lot 78.09. I'm the house closest to the property.
Can you just make sure you speak into that mic? We haven't.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. Last name is Callahan.
Got it, thank you.
Questions for the applicant?
I do. In terms of housing the heavier trucks, how many trucks, are we limited to what's can be put into the existing docking facility, or?
Yes, we're not proposing any expansion of that structure. What we can fit in there is what we're going to use.
Okay, so it's not like you're going to drop in another, I'll have trucks parked all over the place, creating potential for a lot of noise.
No.
Just, Carmen, just for, so we're clear, utility trucks, like an F-150 or?
Well, some of them are construction trucks too,
Yeah.
for the nature
For
of
the
what you
Construction
described.
trucks will be in the
The
building.
crew trucks and the construction equipment vehicles will be inside the garage and will be similar to what the use is now.
Those were the ones that will be used for emergency situations.
Correct.
So that's, Okay, because, yeah, there's a lot of unused property and you're knocking down houses, so there's potential of putting more stuff there, too.
Not really back towards you, though, I don't think so.
No, well, it's still, you
Yeah,
know.
if I understand, your property is down near the sort of the,
No, I can, if,
Yeah.
can you give the pointer?
yeah,
I am that guy right there.
right, so that was what I understood. So our stormwater basin is right there?
Well, that was originally, we had to negotiate that when the original variance was, because they wanted to put, they asked for a variance to put it all the way in the back corner up against my property line.
That
So
won't be
that,
moving.
that's not moving. Now, the other existing buildings are moving or being expanded, and all the heavy trucks will be housed strictly in the,
In that building there.
that building, yeah,
Yep.
the docking facility, for lack of a better word.
That rear property line would require a 50-foot buffer anyway, because it's adjacent to residential.
Right, well, the way it worked out, for the variance, when Hall went in and built the property, we got relief from more than 50 feet.
Sorry, just one other thing you said. I don't know that there's expansions proposed to any of the buildings. And if there are, they would be subject to a separate application, so you'll get a notice for that as well.
Okay. That's really the questions that I had from.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next.
So raise your right hand, please, take the oath. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Yes, when we have your name, please spell your last name and your address, please.
Sure. Name is John Roberts, Roberts. The address is 15 Burke Drive. So it's across from Jack's house or John's house, down the street just a little bit.
Here, or
It's down,
It's that one, it's the one to the left, just to the left.
that one? Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
so my main concern with all this is the noise. Okay, now I know the folks here have testified, have gone to great lengths to say that there's going to be minimum impact on the noise. So, I mean, my concern is, now you didn't, I might have missed it, but how many large utility vehicles, because you said small pickup, but you're talking about the big ones?
Yeah.
How many exactly are you going to have in it?
I believe, do you have the number on that?
Two excavators and a Vector vehicle and a backhoe.
And the crew trucks. Usually, in this type of operation, we have about 3 or 4 crew trucks. You see them all the time.
Sure.
As we said, 2 small excavators on trailer and a Vector truck.
Understood. Okay, so now a lot of this is concerned at night, okay? Now, you said it may be twice a month, okay? So that may or may not be true, and that may evolve over time. And I think one of you guys brought up a point about the audio backup beepers. I mean, that's a thing. That's a thing that we deal with during the day. Now, I know this is for at night.
Yeah.
But like where we live, we are bombarded with noise all day long, all day long. We get it from Harms, we get it from the block plant, we get it from the paving, L&L Paving, Northeast Pallet, it's the Stavola plant, which actually they just started up at night again. It hasn't been for years, but I just heard them within the last month or two. We have so all those guys are on Yellowbrook, they all make noise, we hear it all day long, all day long. And now we may be subjected to something similar at night, even though it may only be a couple times a month, like you said, but in my mind, I see that evolving, okay? And I see it changing. We also have Fazio's, which is going out on Adelphia. They're making all kinds of construction noise. I've got the Girl Scout camp behind my house. Now you think Girl Scout camp, but when they initially went in, it was for Girl Scout activities only. I was here at the meeting, that's what they said, but they have all kinds of, they rent out the building, there's stuff at night. And my fear is that over time, this will evolve into something similar, and we'll have more noise than is what we're talking about here. So that's my concern, and I would just like the board to consider and have respect for the residents that are there, because we are close, and there is a lot of noise that happens. And, even though I'm sure their intentions are to keep things to a minimum, but in our experience, things have just gotten worse and worse over time. Okay? So that's what I wanted to say, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
If I could, and just in very brief response, Mr. Chairman, I don't think there's any activity out here other than coming and going with vehicles that could generate significant noise that would be equivalent to pallet recycling or Stavola, which I assume is an asphalt plant or millworks or something like that, or the construction facility below us.
The other thing I'll add is, and I didn't think of this when we were having the first discussion, the way we operate a garage like that, we back our trucks in. We do that for safety standpoint. So as we were talking about earlier, there's the backup beeping. Those trucks are set up for an exit, a quiet exit, and not, where they have to be backed out of the garage in the middle of the night where you would hear that. And certainly in that kind of situation, we would accommodate not backing them in the middle of the night when we're come back from a job.
Okay, that was my question. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, would you raise your right hand?
Sure.
Tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so.
I do.
And your name, please?
Audrey Callahan, Audrey.
Callahan,
Yes.
and your address, please.
18 Burke Drive.
Questions?
Okay. I have not so much questions because we're not looking at a site plan at this point. We're just talking about hours. I just wanted to give a little history. When we purchased this property, the SCD line was Northeast Pallet Company. It wasn't this property. This was a little mechanic shop that the homeowner that lived in that cape that they're going to knock down had, that they got the commercial variance. So at the time when it got passed through zoning and planning, it was to be, we're going to keep this use because we want to have as residential as possible for the homeowners on Burke Drive, because as you see, it's completely surrounded on ARE2, okay? So I know Yellowbrook Road is a mixed bag. My concern is we're original owners. We bought it 25 years ago to have a nice, quiet place. Our backyard is pretty with deer and so forth and so on. However, this thing is going to be lit up like a torch. I'm going to see it. Not only am I going to see it, I'm going to hear it. And also, it's tied into our sewer, which I know is not the place to discuss this, but it is tied into our sewers on Burke. So the more pavement they put down and the more trucks they come in with, that's going to affect our street. Also, the hours of operation, are we not zoned a residential area? Do we not have the right to have quiet in our backyard? No. This has to be one big, and things get added on, they get changed and everything else. Look at what happened to the hardwood farm up the street from me. Okay, that 30 acres, they keep adding on and adding on. Trucks are coming out now. It's not in full operation going on Adelphia Road. There's trucks from here I'm sure people are going to make a right turn and go on Adelphia Road. That turn is very narrow and it's very dangerous there. So hopefully the traffic will be directed the other way. But my concern is, why should I have to pay $12,000 a year and be lit up in my backyard like I lived in Jersey City? Why? That's the question.
Well, you have to ask the applicant.
I think I know our testimony was there's not going to be any changes to site lighting. The yard's not going to be.
Not now, but you'll get it through. Not now, but why should I have to hear the trucks beep, 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 7 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night? People get their cars. Why do I have to be next to that?
Unfortunately, it is zoned for this use. It is zoned for this use.
Well, the reason the use was restricted to the hours was to protect the residents of Burke Drive, of Howell Woodlands. That's why the hours were put in there. Now you want to take them off for 24/7. Not fair. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward, make a statement or ask questions? Seeing none, can I have a motion to close public?
Motion to close.
Motion by Mr. Merton,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Moretti. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Chairman, that's really all we have for you this evening, other than just to summarize, we're asking for removal of this condition for a very limited and specific purpose. There isn't and there won't be the facilities out here to undertake the kind of construction or other operational activities that maybe some of the commenters from the public had concerns about. You will, of course, see this property again as the water company, molds it into the fashion that it wants to going forward. There are very limited opportunities to further develop this site in terms of expansion of buildings or additional impervious coverage. And while I am always very respectful and mindful of the concerns of adjacent property owners, and I completely realize that sometimes there are uses that are close to you or within proximity to you that, may be somewhat offensive or you might wish that they weren't there. 40, 50 years ago, you could buy 40 acres because you could approve it, you could build a house in the middle of it and not have anybody around you. But as land prices go up and up, unfortunately, people just can't afford, I know I can't, to live like that anymore. And at some point, you do have a dividing line between zoning districts, and you do have uses that, perhaps the property owners feel are incompatible adjacent to that use. So we would respectfully request that you grant the relief that we're requesting.
Charles?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one final comment. So in one of the response letters issued by the applicant, they indicated that there were some right-of-way dedications, some site triangle easements and other easements that may not have been officially dedicated to the township. I would just say if the board does rule favorably, applicant should be required to file, the official easements and right-of-way dedication that was originally required for the, original site plan approval.
I can actually represent to you that this did come up right after the owner of the property submitted this application, and the owner of the property actually did file those easements, and I think the copies were provided to the township. We'll make sure that you
Provide a record for the board?
Yeah, we'll
Thank you.
make sure that the board gets them.
Jen?
As I said, I feel, the site is zoned SED. The operations, as been described to us by the applicant, are consistent with what's already existing, if not less intense than what's there now. The only reason that they're here before us is because there's a house on the property. If the house were to be demolished today and they made the application tomorrow, they wouldn't be here. So I feel, and in spite of that, the applicant put the testimony on the record. It's a public utility that is an essential service. I would say, I do agree it's inherently beneficial. I feel that the impact to the, I feel there's no impact to the zone plan and zoning ordinance because their use is permitted, which is what is anticipated in this zone. And I feel like the use as described will have a minimal impact, if any impact on the surrounding land uses. So I feel that the applicant through its testimony has met its burden.
Okay, board members, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the request to change the hours and with the elimination of the residents within 13 months. And then I believe make sure it's demolished 3 months after that. And then with their recommendation that they, when they come back, they're going to demolish the other buildings. That hall is in, I believe you said?
The buildings to the south of the property.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but yeah, the ones down.
So that'll be another situation. And any recommendations that were made by our professionals, I think we should accept them. That's my motion.
Thank you. Motion by Mr. Moretti. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to also add to Mr. Moretti in my second that the tents are resolved that they were talking about, and expanding the hours due to emergencies and the public utility aspect. I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Hughes. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, you may. Mr. Hughes?
Yes.
Mr. Mertens?
Real quick, I appreciate the residents coming here tonight, and believe me, I've listened to you, residents' many cases, and I certainly understand you don't want to hear noise at night. This kind of operation, I think, as our planner said, is in the public's best interest, and that is what I feel as a board member I have to put, and I do not see this being an excessive amount of noise, and that's why I will be voting yes as well.
Mr. Moretti?
Yes.
Mr. Orozco?
Yes.
Mr. Cantor?
Yes.
Chairman Nansen?
I too agree with my board members, whatever the findings of facts that they placed on the record, all testimony be placed on the record and be drawn up also with the resolution. I also know that they'll be back with the site plan at some point in time. With the south side being the elimination of that farmland buffer that would be needed if those buildings stayed, you know, I too will vote yes. I feel very strongly that the impact of the business that's going in and the utility that's going in is going to be way greater, less than what's existing on the site now. I know the Hall Construction, I'm familiar with the site, the heavy equipment that they have coming in and out, dozers, big trucks, dump trucks, you know, that's going to cease. There was tractor trailers that went in and out, storage of stockpiles of materials being placed back there. You know, all of that is going to cease. I feel that the intensity of the property with that commercial building, you know, the 2-story or 3-story building that's there, was far more intense if it was totally leased out. You'd have a lot of people coming and going, both, you know, not really retail, but office, be open to the public, which this will not be. So, you know, you're going to have people showing up to go to work, leaving to go do their service jobs. You're going to have office personnel, which out of the 65, I would maintain that probably a quarter of that's going to be office personnel. So, you know, that's just a guess. But those people are coming and staying. Then they'll go home at the end of the day. The only people that will be coming in during any type of overnight would be a service crew, which I think would be very minimal to what would be permitted now, or what's going on now, except the hours of the operation, which is in effect now. So I really don't feel that the use of this property is going to be expanded any at all. So, yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, guys. Any further business, professionals? Nothing further? Board members,
I left him a message.
y'all have a safe Halloween. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion that we adjourn?
Motion by Mr. Moretti,
Second?
seconded by Mr. Hughes. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Zoning Board adjourned 8:55.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.